think, right?
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome. Happy Thursday. Here we are. Somehow we are already the end of October. Kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Chase, I want to welcome you. All right, guys. So we are going to get started here in just a minute. As usual, I have to look over to my other screen. All right. I think we are live on all the places. We are live on Instagram, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, all the places. All right, welcome everybody. Happy Thursday. All right, so let's start off with maybe a rhetorical question, shall we? Have you ever felt frustrated running test after test and just not finding those answers that you need for your patients or your clients? I know I've been there, done that, right? If this sounds familiar, I really think you're going to love today's episode. So, hey everyone, I want to welcome you. Leslie Vitale here, business strategist for integrative and functional medicine practitioners. And today I am so excited to be joined by Chase Zittrauer. And he is from Cyrex Laboratories. And we're going to have a really great conversation about how functional immunology testing can reveal what's truly driving that underlying inflammation in order to help you make faster and definitely more precise clinical decisions. And of course, while fueling growth for your practice at the same time. All right, so we got a lot of great stuff in store for you today. To kick things off, I want to welcome Chase. I'm so happy to have you here with me today, Chase. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about where are you calling in from? And maybe give us a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, so I am currently based in Kansas City and starting to get a little bit cold here, but I am a sales rep for Cyrex Laboratories, but I've been in the functional medicine space for a few years now, and I do love it. It's a really, really tight-knit, awesome community. Many years ago, I got my Bachelor of Science in Cellular and Molecular Biology, which is where I was first kind of exposed to the work of our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Aristo Vajdani, who we refer to as the father of functional immunology. And so I've been a fan of his for a long time. I ended up going on to get into other sales roles, and a couple of years ago completed my Master of Business Administration. So I got my MBA.
Absolutely. Right?
Yes. And with the concentration in data analytics, I've always wanted to sell in this space and to be in this space. And so when I got the opportunity to come over to Cyrex Laboratories and kind of work with the things that Dr. Vajdani has given us, I was just so grateful for that. And so I'm glad to be here and glad to talk about it.
Yeah, so exciting. All right. Great background. Really can appreciate that. That hardcore clinical background combined with the MBA is really so helpful. So let's jump in, shall we? I really want to talk about Cyrex. For our audience, I know that many people listening today are familiar with Cyrex. That being said, we might have some people who maybe are not so familiar. So could you kind of fill us in a little bit on this, what does Cyrex specialize in? What are they really known for? And just give us a little bit of background on the company.
Yeah, of course. And Cyrex has been around since 2011. And what we are is a functional immunology laboratory. So we look at a lot of different things, but everything that we look at is through the lens of the immune system, which is mainly what differentiates us from standard care labs or other labs that are in the functional space. Again, because we bring that immune perspective and kind of we break down the tests. We have several tests. We break them down into 4 different categories. So we do immune evaluation and autoimmune risk. We do gut health, think leaky gut, and food sensitivities. We do toxic triggers, and then we do cognitive health and brain function as well. So there's a lot of different things to choose from. But again, the centerpiece is that we're looking at it a lot of times through immunoglobulin reactivity, and different things like that. So I'm happy to kind of drill down on any of those specific tests, but that's just a general idea of kind of what we do.
Okay. Yeah. I think it would be helpful if you can maybe differentiate how your testing differs from perhaps what is readily available to functional medicine practitioners.
Of course. So what I'd like to start with, of course, is the methodology. And as somebody who participated in undergraduate research centered around immunology and then some graduate level research, I came to know that the methodology with which we're conducting these tests, especially as it relates to patient clinical diagnostics, is so important. So I do like to highlight that Cyrex uses ELISA methodology, which is the gold standard as it relates to immunology testing and patient diagnostics. And so everything that you run through us is going to be run on ELISA, again, which is the gold standard. One of the things, probably what I like to talk about that really differentiates us is our Array 11. It's our chemical immune reactivity screen. And a lot of times with some of the other laboratories, you can get a urine levels test. And with a urine levels test, we like to say, of course, you get some information, but we do like to see the chemicals coming out in the urine because that means that the patient is detoxing the chemicals. So that's a good thing. But how do you really understand how the body is reacting to the presence of the chemicals? And so on ours, we look at several different IgG, IgA, and IgM immune reactivity to the chemicals to show a true body burden. Because a lot of times what happens is these chemicals are too small for the body to form an immune response to directly, but they form a chemical tissue complex, what we refer to as a neoantigen. And that's what the body does the immune response, enacts the immune response against. And that's what we're measuring, which is a lot more stable of a measure than a urine levels test. And again, gives you insight into how those chemicals are actually affecting the body. And Leslie, it's like this: you and I could both take a urine levels test, and you could have a decently high level of BPA, and mine could be low or in range. And you could take our Array 11, and your immune system can be tolerant of that BPA, meaning you're not forming a massive immune response. It's not causing inflammation in your body. But my normal in-range BPA level on a urine test, my body can be highly inflammatory against it. And so in your case, it's likely not what's brought you to see a functional provider. But in my case, something that I thought, I didn't have to worry about at all is causing serious systemic inflammation. And it's likely at least part of the picture of the root cause. And it's like that for so many of the different tests that we offer. We do, with our Array 2, we do leaky gut testing. We look at immune reactivity to actomycin, occludin, zonulin, lipopolysaccharides. And so instead of taking a stool test where you get a level of zonulin, which has an incredibly short half-life and can vary throughout the day depending on when the sample is provided, we get a stable measure when looking at the immunoglobulin reactivity to it. Does that make sense?
It does. It's fascinating. So to be clear, I think I heard you say, just for clarification for our audience, this is a blood draw, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So everything that we do is a blood draw. Most of them are serum blood draws. We do have one or two tests that are going to include a whole blood lavender top tube as well. So, and we do not do the dried blood spot, again, just because of the way that we conduct the test and our quality assurance. We get the best, most stable results from a serum blood draw.
Okay, I love that. Okay, so you mentioned, I think, Array 11. Is that what it's called? Okay.
It is, yeah.
And then who help our audience and myself get clarity around I always like to talk patient types, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm a practitioner and I've got this certain type of patient with specific symptoms, when would, for example, the array 11 be a good next step?
Well, and that's a really good question. Of course, we live in an extremely toxic environment. I know that you and probably everyone that's listening can agree on that. We all have various levels of chemicals in the body. But, a patient, of course, a patient that has chronic systemic inflammation, a patient that's dealing with any type of neurological symptoms, a patient that's at risk for Alzheimer's and dementia, a patient with I can't remember if I already said a history of cancer or a
Okay.
cancer diagnosis. And of course, autoimmune patients, but also a patient that has leaky gut and gut issues. And we know whenever we're looking to potentially heal the gut, if we've identified a gut issue, we know a lot of times there can be a die-off process that can occur whenever we start to correct issues in the gut. And one thing that Dr. Vajtani always points out is that it's really good to evaluate chemicals first so we can get the liver functioning just in case we do experience a die-off and we need that liver functioning for a really good detox process in the course of attacking inflammation and leaky gut.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense? I know that's a lot.
It does. So, all right. So, for example, for array 11, someone who's got, pretty much the full gamut, it sounds like, right? Someone that presents with gut issues, you suspect leaky gut. I love your explanation around zonulin, because, we know that many practitioners tend towards a stool test, right?
Right.
But I love what you said about, it gives great data, but maybe doesn't tell you the full picture.
Right.
In that methodology, right?
Exactly.
So really what I'm hearing, let me know if I'm on par here, is history of cancer, any kind of memory, brain issues. I would assume brain fog, low energy, fatigue, certainly gut issues.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then, and to complement the array 2, which is the leaky gut test that
Tell me about that.
And so, array 2, again, it looks at actomyosin, it looks at occludin zonulin, and it looks at lipopolysaccharides. And one of probably the most important marker on that test is lipopolysaccharides. And we look at LPS. Yeah, LPS.
I'm so intrigued by LPS. Okay, let's talk about LPS. Can you, if you don't mind, can you give us an overview on why this is such a critical marker?
It is, and also the reason for looking at it through the immune system as well. Okay. So the importance of lipopolysaccharides, especially with the immune perspective, is that when we build antibodies against lipopolysaccharides, those easily become cross-reactive with multiple organs and organ systems in the body. One of the main ones that it becomes cross-reactive against are blood-brain barrier proteins. And so a patient that's struggling with leaky gut can easily enter into a trajectory where they're developing leaky brain. And of course, when we have disruption of the blood-brain barrier, we enter the space of neuroinflammation and neuroautoimmunity that can lead to a host of things like multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. And so it's really important. Of course, we know that so much starts in the gut, but it's important to do these screens to understand where your patient lies on that autoimmune spectrum. Are we just at gut issues? Are we just at the beginning of that? Are we at regional inflammation, or are we at serious systemic inflammation with disruption of the blood-brain barrier?
I see. Okay, so just reminding us that the development of an autoimmune disorder is a process, right?
Yes.
It's not like, okay, one day I wake up and I have it, right? It
Right.
literally is a process. And I think what you're saying is LPS is a really good, useful measurement to ascertain where we are in that process.
In that spectrum,
developing
yeah,
autoimmune.
absolutely. And
Okay.
in LPS and many of the other things that we look at, the immune reactivity to these antigens we're looking at can show up years before clinical onset or clinical presentation of a diagnosed autoimmune disease. And so we want to interrupt that process and get early detection as soon as we can, because by the time you go to an allopathic provider and they diagnose you with autoimmune disease, it's almost too late. I'm not saying it's too late. There are interventions, there are things that we can do, but it's so far advanced.
Okay. So that always brings me to the question of, clinical utility of testing. So hypothetically, if you can speak to this, what do we do if we see an elevated LPS?
So in Cyrex offers, we offer free clinical consultations to go along with any of our tests. And so, what we're going to be looking at though is some type of protocol and some type of treatment to support the gut, to support the microbiome, and then heal the evident leaky gut that the patient is dealing with. And so whatever that looks like in your own practice, in your own standard of care, and then of course considering the patient's history and their other sensitivities. But it may be time to consider, is this patient, what's their diet like? Of course, are they wheat or gluten sensitive? Do they have a ton of other food sensitivities? And of course, Cyrex does have additional testing for that. We have the most comprehensive wheat and gluten sensitivity test on the market, because we look at a ton of different proteins and transglutaminase enzymes that are associated with wheat and gluten. And then we have a massive food sensitivity test, our Array 10, that we're different because we look at raw, cooked, and modified versions of all of those foods.
Fascinating. Versus most test methodology, what are they looking at? Cooked?
Raw, actually.
Raw,
Most tests, most food sensitivity tests offered by other labs are one, they're dried blood spot, right? So a little bit less reproducible than a full serum blood draw. And then most of them are only looking at raw antigen. And so in order to get the complete picture, of course, we know when proteins are exposed to heat, they denature, they change conformation, and that's what's going in the body, and that's what the immune system is forming a reaction against. And so that's what we call real world exposure. So you may have people that think, oh, I'm allergic to X, Y, and Z, but they can eat the cooked version.
That's actually really fascinating, because if you think about it, so most tests are looking at the raw protein.
Correct.
But we aren't, typically we cook our food, right? So definitely it's feeling like a little bit of a mismatch there, right?
Exactly.
In terms of the clinical, I guess, utility of that particular test. So that is so fascinating. Okay, so you guys do so many different immune-based tests. It's really pretty cool. What is your most recent innovation?
So, and thanks for the question. Super excited to talk about this. And so the test that we've launched a couple of months ago, it's called the Biome Burden Complete. It is a 3-tiered test system. So you have 3 different tiers to choose from, but we do recommend starting with the most comprehensive version, which is the Biome Burden Complete. And what we look at on that test is IgG, and IgA reactivity to a lot of different species of Candida. We also look at Candida proteins, Candida lysine, and Candida germ tube protein. Those are essential proteins in the development of Candida biofilm. So this is a novel approach to understanding if your patient actually has Candida biofilm present, which I'm sure you're aware. Again, there are limitations with respect to Candida in stool testing. A lot of times, if the patient has Candida biofilm, it's so sticky in the gut that Candida may not come out on a stool test. It may not be able to be cultured. By looking at the immune response, you get a stable reading. And then not only that, you get to know, how is the body responding to the presence? Is it causing inflammation? And is biofilm actually present? And so super exciting stuff. On that test, we also look at food-derived yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Saccharomyces boulardii. You get a mold marker as well, and then some bacterial markers that include anaerobic, anaerobic, and enteropathogens. But the best part is that you have a third section that includes T cell data. And so you get your WBC, you get your total lymphocyte reading, you get Th1, Th2, Th17, and T regulatory cells, and then their respective ratios. So now I have insight into the balance of the immune system, and then the micro and the mycobiome. And so I get to have a two-pronged approach to treatment. Now I can treat for Candida or Candida biofilm, anything that comes up elevated, and then I get to work with that T cell data to modulate the immune system. So a lot of times when we see disruption in the myco or the fungal biome in a patient, we see super elevated Th17, which is characteristic. We see a lot of Th2 dominance. And so at the same time, again, that I'm treating for Candida or biofilm, I get to work to bring down Th17, to upregulate T regulatory or Th1 and restore those ratios to a healthy immune balance. And the providers that are taking that approach are telling me, Chase, my patients are feeling better faster because I'm modulating the immune system. It's just like me. If I'm sick, I go to the doctor and say, give me a steroid shot. I want to feel better. Yeah. AKA modulate my immune system. And it's the same principle here, right? Because when we're working to modulate the immune system, we're reducing inflammation and we're arming the immune system to be more functional for the patient.
Okay. So, wow, this sounds like a really great test. Again, serum based, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And
so
this
all
one,
of your tests are serum versus other. Okay.
Now for the biome burden complete, because we look at that T cell data, it'll be one whole blood tube and one serum tube. That's in one kit. It's a mixed specimen kit.
Okay. Great. So I want to take a peek at our comments. I want to welcome Christina. Great to have you with us. So exciting. And Kara Bolton, such great information. Fantastic. And I want to welcome everyone joining us. I see some names that I recognize, including Dorothy. How's Dorothy doing? Welcome. All right, guys. And just want to let you know that I've got the comments turned on. So as we go through this information, please drop your questions. We've got the expert here. And I want to make sure that everybody walks away with, a high degree of comfort in terms of, next steps and, how do we move forward? All right. So, okay. And I want to say hello to Dana from Bucharest. How awesome is that? Romania. Sounds really, really amazing. Okay. So yeah, just a reminder to our audience, drop us questions. We are here to get them answered for you so that you have clarity on how to move forward. All right, so that is your newest innovation, which sounds so useful from a clinical perspective. So again, if at all possible, can you paint a little picture for us in terms of, if I'm a clinician, I'm looking at your tests, there's a lot of choices.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking one thing that would be helpful is if, when we look at this brand new test, can you help us kind of picture what is the appropriate patient type to match with this new test?
Yeah, of course. A patient, of course, with a history of leaky gut, of course, if they come to you with a history of recurrent candida infection or dysbiosis,
Okay.
this is going to be a really good test for them. I like this test a lot for a neuroinflammatory patient, and I'll explain why. So even MS, I think every MS patient should get this test.
Okay.
Beyond
MS, meaning multiple sclerosis.
multiple sclerosis, absolutely. And I'll explain why. So because we look at that T cell data, one of the things also that we know that's established in the literature, especially recently, is that the fungal biome or the microbiome in a patient is such a major immune modulator that we're almost now considering it its own separate immune organ. And so getting insight into the myco or the fungal biome of your patient gives you further insight into what's going on with the immune system. Now, the reason that those T cells are so important, especially as it relates to neuroinflammation and neuroautoimmunity, again, is because when we see dysbiosis in the fungal biome or the microbiome, we see elevated Th17, we see elevated Th2. And a lot of times what can happen is that Th17 and Th2 work to downregulate the cytotoxic activity of Th1. And that deactivates an antiviral pathway that's responsible for latent viral reactivation of things like Epstein-Barr, human herpes virus 6, CMV, and others. And so if you have a patient with a history of Epstein-Barr, which I'm sure you've seen, I'm sure a lot of the providers that are that are watching have seen.
Pretty much everyone's had it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The problem from what I can see is sometimes we get triggered through assaults to the immune system where it reactivates. Is that right?
That's it. Absolutely. And what the latest research is showing, and a lot of the work done by our own Dr. Vajdani's son, Dr. Elroy, who is an MD in California, again, that fungal biome is modulating the immune system to such a degree that it's allowing for latent viral reactivation. And so now we know that at least in part, this could be the root cause of that latent viral reactivation. And of course, we know how important and implicated Epstein-Barr is in the development of multiple sclerosis. And so this is, again, good for any neuroinflammatory patient, good for all of your MS patients, because in case studies, we've seen that there is significant dysbiosis in the fungal biome. And when we can address that and we can balance the immune system, in several cases, I've seen remission of multiple sclerosis alongside other therapies, of course.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
And so, yeah, that's major. That's major.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. That's really, really something. Okay. So let's shift gears just a little bit. And I'd love to get your insight on maybe some common issues, maybe some common complaints, if you will, that you hear from practitioners about functional labs.
Absolutely. And again, I've been in this space for several years, and probably the main thing that you hear is, can I trust these results?
Okay.
Or I've run this test and then I did a retest and it doesn't make sense. And that's a major challenge, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
I've heard it too. Are these results reproducible?
Exactly.
I've heard that, and I've heard people sending in, honestly, 3 different samples anonymously, and every sample's different. I've also, there's, full gamut. So yeah,
And
that's I'd love to hear from our audience. What have been, what are your concerns around functional testing? And can you relate to, this scenario that we're talking about here, the reproducibility? So
right.
go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned something that Cyrex encourages, which is a split sample, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is I'm a provider, and I split one sample into, and I send it blind with two different names to the lab to see if I'm getting that same result. And as someone that works at Cyrex, I just want you to know we encourage that. If that's ever something that you'd like to do, we would encourage that to test the validity and the scientific rigor of what we are bringing to market. And I've talked to practitioners for several years who have done this with some of the other labs, and they're not necessarily getting back the same results on the same sample, and that's an issue. And so, my message again is, if that's a question that you have with the laboratory provider that you're using, then I would encourage you to do that. And again, I like to highlight ELISA specifically for clinical immunology, single patient testing is the gold standard, because all of the research, all of the body of scientific research as it relates to clinical immunology is done on ELISA. So all of the publications that we're using to justify the reason that these tests are valuable for the patient are done using ELISA methodology. And so if the methodology is not ELISA, then I have questions, obviously, about that.
Yeah.
And that's my main point as far as that's concerned.
Okay.
For sure.
So we have a question coming in through Instagram. Lots of great comments, by the way. This is fascinating, incredible. What questions should I be asking my lab?
What is their methodology? How do they do? I mean, in the vein of what we're talking about here, there's a ton of questions that you could ask, but what's the research that backs the validity of this? What are your quality assurance? How does that work? What is your methodology? What does that look like? Those are all really important questions that, in my opinion, your rep should know the answer to. But if they don't know the answer to it, then they should definitely be able to put you in contact with someone at the lab, their lab director or a lab manager, that can give you those answers.
Okay. So on that point, I don't know if you can address this in, I don't know, a diplomatic way, but we all know that stool testing is very, very popular, right? To look at the microbiome. Could you just clarify for our audience, and I know you touched on this, but just to really kind of clarify again, why is that not optimal? I guess is the best way I can pose that question.
And I do want to start by saying I think there is a place for stool testing.
I want to be clear on that too, because
right,
there is utility for all these tests.
Absolutely, and there are some incredible labs that are doing absolutely outstanding work in the functional medicine space as it relates to gut testing and stool testing. So what I'm saying is the difference between what Cyrex offers and what a stool test offers is the difference between understanding if something is present and how it's affecting the body. Just because we know that zonulin is present, or just because we know that some level of candida or potentially clostridia or something else is present, we have no indication in how the patient's body is reacting to it. And those of us that have been in functional integrative space, we have a systems-based approach, and we know that it's important to understand how the system of the patient is reacting to every different thing, and to take that into account in conjunction with clinical presentation. And so before we we start any type of treatment protocol or detox protocol or anything like that, or remove foods or anything from the diet completely, it's important to understand, how are these things affecting the body? How are they affecting the immune system?
Okay.
And then how is that driving disease on the other side?
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my gosh. Is this landing for everybody? Like, some light bulbs just kind of went on for me. All right. So just because I have LPS, I think you used that example, right?
Mhm.
You and I might both have maybe even a similar level, let's just say.
Yeah.
The key to this is, okay, we both have it, but maybe my body is blowing up with inflammation and causing havoc systemically, but yours is like maybe handling it better. Is that kind of the deal here at the end of the day?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And when I'm trying to get to the root cause of what's going on, almost everything that we discuss, pathologies and different things caused by pathogens and toxins and so many things, they go through the gate of the immune system.
Okay.
And I've talked to providers for years that say, well, I've started with this, I've started with that, and now I'm going to do immune testing. But if the bottleneck is the immune system,
Yes.
let's start there. You know what I
Yes.
mean? We know that testing dollars and treatment dollars are limited in a lot of these patients because they've been through years of this
For
stuff.
addressing that. That's really true.
Right. It is. It is. So why not let's start at the bottleneck and understand what's going on here instead of spending in a price sensitive patient, if that makes sense.
I think it makes great sense. And guys, let me know, anyone listening, if this is landing. We have more content, but just want to share, if this is resonating for you and you'd like to learn more and, potentially open an account with Cyrex, I wanted to share the website and really encourage you to do so. Especially, based on everything I'm learning, I would highly encourage everyone to go check them out. Go to joincyrex.com, get yourself an account, and get this process started for your patients and clients. Okay.
And here, Leslie, on that website, it does have all of the full test menu, all of the information.
Great.
And then there's a resource tab that has all of our recent webinars there as well.
Oh,
and
so
there's just podcasts, webinars, Dr. Hyman's on there talking.
Oh, great.
To Dr. Elroy Bajani. So there's so many resources for them to pick through and to learn a little bit more about what Cyrex is all about there as well.
Okay. And yes, we're answering the question, where can I learn more about Cyrex? So hopefully that makes sense. Charlie, you can go directly to the source, joincyrex.com, get yourself an account. And then once that happens, you will get access to really just a plethora of educational resources so that you can learn more. And because Cyrex has a lot of tests, I would think that you really want to figure out, like, what is a good starting point?
Right.
Do you have any insight on, just because there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I want everyone here to walk away with a little bit of clarity in terms of, where do I start?
Of course. No, and again, I think this is where, making that connection with your rep and your representative at the company, I do think is important, because each case is different. Clinical presentation is different. And as a rep at Cyrex, all of us are trained to kind of give recommendations and insight. And then, of course, if the questions are a little bit too deep, we're happy to get you set up with a clinical consultant to give more guidance even before you take the test or before you order the test. And and that's available. We do have, and I haven't had a chance to mention it, but we do have a really good initial diagnostic screen, which is our previous latest innovation. which is called the lymphocyte map. And this is a blood draw, a whole blood tube. And what it is a full mapping of the patient's immune system. So think far more advanced than a CBC or even basic immunophenotyping that you might get from a traditional laboratory. You get on this test fully differentiated immune cells, their respective ratios. So that subset of T cells that you saw on the Biome Burden Complete, that is a part of the lymphocyte map. And so you get a lot more expanded data on there. And what we do is take that data and we immunophenotype the patient into one of 14 different immunophenotypes. And then those correspond with different things like mold exposure, chemical exposure, autoimmune disease, dysbiosis. And so for a complex patient, that might be a really good place to start if you're not sure. If you're sure, if you're certain that they have, they have a lot of food sensitivities, you strongly suspect leaky gut, then I would start with an array 2 and potentially pair that with some of the other food sensitivity tests. If you know that they're neuroinflammatory, and that they have a history of Epstein-Barr, of course, I would probably consider the Biome Burden test. Okay. If they're over 55 and they have a family history of Alzheimer's and dementia, I would consider our Alzheimer's links test, which is a really cool array that goes into a lot of different factors that contribute to the inflammation in the brain associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so there's a lot of different places to start, but that's what's so great about the Cyrex system is that there's no necessarily right or wrong way to start. You're going to get to the answer, but we're here to help as employees of Cyrex 100%.
And that's the key. That's one of my big takeaways based on everything you just shared is you've got support at Cyrex.
Absolutely.
You have to make these decisions in a vacuum. You've got support. We're just kind of giving you an overview of options, but at the end of the day, you're going to be well guided through, whether that be your sales representative or, employees at Cyrex, which I think is so key. So I think that's going to be really helpful. So I wanted to touch on just a couple more areas in our remaining time. So we know practitioners, we're not salespeople at heart, right? So, but we want to help patients to get the test they need, right? Obviously. So do you have any tips for positioning these tests with patients to just make sure they take advantage of every resource that their provider is suggesting? Any tips on positioning Cyrex labs to one's patients or clients?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think you really hit on a part of the answer. So for myself, I think I'm like probably you and a lot of the providers that you speak with. I got into cellular and molecular biology and kind of into this field because I had a personal reason. My mom had autoimmune disease. And, I wanted to learn everything that I could about the human body. And I think that a lot of us that, again, get into this field, get into it for altruistic reasons. And I just want to know that two things can exist at once, right? We can be in this for the right thing, for the right reason, because we want to help patients, but we can also recognize that it's a business and there are business aspects to practicing in this field. And part of that is making that value proposition to the patients and helping them understand why it's so important to get different types of testing. I've seen a lot of different strategies from successful providers. I talked to a provider a few weeks ago who said that on the initial consultations, whether that's 1 or 2 consults, before he makes any recommendations, he likes for the spouse to come with the patient. So we get buy-in from both. I think a lot of the objections that we hear frequently are, well, I need to talk to my wife about it, or I need to talk to my husband about it. But if we can get them both in the same room and we go through this detailed patient workup and then we're making recommendations, I think we can get buy-in from both at the same time. And that's been a really effective strategy that I've
That's
heard.
huge.
Yeah, major. And then
That other person, if they're not there, it's probably, let's just say it's more likely to fall on deaf ears, right? Because they're going to be like, what are you talking about here? Okay, that's huge. So big takeaway, I think a pearl of wisdom is try to have that whoever else is involved in the purchasing decision might be a good idea to try to have them present.
Right. Absolutely. And then, as far as Cyrex is concerned, just stressing the importance, again, of the immune perspective and why skipping to this stage in diagnostics really puts us ahead of the game. Because, again, this is a major bottleneck through which most conditions meet. On the other side of it are so many different things. And so let's start here. Let's start an immune evaluation because you're going to feel better faster when we address the immune system.
Oh, that's the key.
It's huge.
Oh my gosh, I love that's huge. Feel better faster. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
That's right.
We want to give, our patients and clients, we want to give them fast relief. Yeah. So
I say feel better faster and heal better faster.
Yes. Oh,
100%.
So good. Okay. Really, really powerful. So let's maybe touch on one more thing. So how can creating strong relationships with our lab representatives lead to greater networking opportunities in this functional medicine space? So I'm really curious about what you have to say here. And, how can we potentially use these new connections, new relationships to drive business and ultimately help our patients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so much of what we do on either side of this comes down to community. And the community comes down to sharing information and spreading education. And so if you have a lab rep or contact at the lab that and trust and that you've spent time with, they are a gate to a broader community, whether that is in your city or in your neighborhood or the functional and integrative space at large. And I'm seeing this happen time and time again, where I'm able to make introductions to people that they end up building referral relationships. Whether I'm working with an acupuncturist and then I know a medical doctor, and then they start referring patients to one another, or they connect and they start sharing treatment strategies to improve outcomes. I think that it's kind of overlooked the role that the sales rep plays in some of that. And I do think, taking the time to develop that relationship and at least hear your rep out. I'm a little bit partial because I'm a rep, right? But at least hear your rep out.
Critical role though, honestly. I mean,
absolutely.
It's, the education, the support, all the things.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to attempt to summarize what you just said. You let me know if I took this in correctly. But I think what you said is that, by forging a strong relationship with your lab representative, just as an example, you could potentially, get introduced to other potential referral partners and collaboration opportunities. Is that
absolutely? Okay. Absolutely. And
that's
then
amazing.
And then the education part, right? What I can learn other things. What conferences are going really good right now? Okay. Where should I attend? Who should I be learning from? What's that information? And so, I think, increasing visibility, increasing traffic, referral opportunities, and education are all things that we can provide as lab reps.
Huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge. So absolutely just incredible. Okay, so I think the takeaway there is get to know your lab rep, right?
Absolutely.
Because it can really only help you and ultimately help your business.
Absolutely.
So as we start to wrap up, what are some, maybe final takeaways, Chase, that you would like to share? Any kind of final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart on our audience today?
So, and thank you, Leslie, again for the opportunity to be here. This is so awesome. And I love Cyrex. I love what we offer. Again, just stressing the methodology and the immune perspective and the sense of community that we have here. Everyone that I know that works at Cyrex is a true believer in what Cyrex does. Mm-hmm. And if you're new to what we do, if you're new to the immune perspective and looking at inflammation, I would encourage you, create an account, talk to one of us. You know what I mean? Let us guide you with all of the resources that we have. And we're here to support you in your journey on this, whether you're new to functional medicine or you're just new to Cyrex, or you're Cyrex curious and you've known about us for a while, but you haven't taken the dive. You're welcome here. And we just want to talk to you and tell you more about what we do, because we really believe in what we're doing here 100%.
Oh, I can tell. It's very evident. I love that. So I think really the key takeaway is go to joincyrex.com, get yourself an account, get, access to those educational webinars and, all those resources that you have available. And and then you will be supported throughout the process. Absolutely. In terms of because again, I feel like the big thing is, where do I start?
Yeah.
My takeaway is at Cyrex that you're going to be guided, because every practice is so different, every, approach is going to be different. But when you join forces with Cyrex, you're going to get all the guidance you need in order to make those clinical decisions that are going to be in the best interest of your patient.
Right. Exactly. And
there's a pool of funds, right?
Right. Exactly.
And
go
ahead.
Even if we don't think that a Cyrex test would be the best for your patient, we'll tell you. And I think that speaks a lot to what we do here. So.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of transparency is incredible. All right, guys, so we're going to start to wrap up. Chase, this has been such a great discussion. I genuinely hope you'll join me again in the future. All right?
Absolutely.
So I think the response really speaks to what an important topic this is. Mm-hmm. So I really would love to invite you and have you back. And we can dig in a little deeper on some of these topics. So, but again, I want to thank you for your willingness to hop on with me, to share your expertise, and just giving us an overview of all the amazing work that Cyrex is doing in this functional immunology root cause testing space. All right. So, all right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I know everyone's got places to go, patients to see, right? So we're going to wrap up today. I want to thank you so very much for all of the great comments and questions today. And specifically, Chase, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, of course. My email, and I don't know if you can put it up here. My email is Chase, Chase.
I can type it in.
Okay, very good. Chase .z as in zebra at Cyrex, Cyrex labs, labs.com. So Chase Z at cyrexlabs.com.
All right, I think I got this right. Let's see. All right, did I get it?
Perfect, you got it. Absolutely.
You got it. All right, guys, you got a direct link. So go ahead if you have questions. I hope you don't mind.
No, no, I don't. Please
it's always nice to have a direct contact with the company. So go ahead and again, grab yourself an account. I think I've got that here. Join Cyrex.com. If you want to email Chase directly, I did share his contact info in the comments, and that is chase.z@cyrexlabs.com. All right, Chase, I do hope you'll come back.
I would love to.
In the very near future. I'd love to continue this incredible conversation. And I do want to thank everyone for your great comments and questions. And looking forward to seeing you next time. So I'll see you again. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Okay,
You too,
everybody,
Leslie.
take care.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thanks
Bye.
again, Chase. Really appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks.
All right.